Want more of the Josh Scanlon podcast?
Please. Please.
Here you go. The Josh Scanlon podcast starts right now. Good Sunday, February 17th, 2019, my friends. Appreciate you being here on the Josh Scanlon podcast. Today we're going to talk about government studies and how jacked up they are and how much we rely on them. And I sit here stunned today to report the insanity of the reliance on government studies in terms of the spending that we do. So a long time, about 3 years ago, I was doing a study on just some research. I like financial planning research. I always have. I like research, generally speaking. I like to get to the bottom of what we've been told because I'm a cynic. I always have been, always will be. I think it's raised by my parents, hippies on the left, to challenge authority in all shapes and sizes. And of course, the authority back then was a different type of authority. Nixon was where they got their, they protested, I guess. Yeah, Nixon, right? 68. Yeah. Well, 67, they met in San Francisco. So Johnson, my dad was going to get drafted. I think he did get drafted because my mom was pregnant with me. He got a deferral. And they were from the far left. And so they're protesting. And then by then, I was born in 1970, so I would have been Nixon by then. But anyway, the authority was, the Ronald Reagan was a governor of California. The Nixon was a president. They were big in Democratic, far left-wing politics in the 70s. We used to have Gus Hall, Angela Davis stickers and pins and buttons and whatnot in our home in 1976. When Reagan won in 1980, I remember explicitly, like it was yesterday, my mom crying, we're all going to die. And anyway, that's where I come from. So it was always to challenge the authority, and the authority back then was the right wing, I guess. The pro-American right wing authority, the Ronald Reagans of the world, the LBJs and whatnot. So I've always been raised like that, and I think that's actually a wonderful thing to challenge the authority, because the authority is. It needs to be challenged, and has been way too overused to speak truth to power. Everyone says that anymore. It's lost its meaning. But there are some points where the authority of the government will stamp out countering points of view. But be it as it may. And so one of the things I've always just found was interesting was all these citations going back in time from the government saying we should do this because this is our research. And then you're like, well, how about other research? And you're like, but that other research didn't get basically, it was a pillow was put on its head before in infancy, before it had time to actually get some notoriety and some research funding in itself. And we've seen that time and time again with Ansel Keys, with climate research. Ansel Keys was nutrition science, climate research. I mean, just you name it. The list goes back as far as the time can see in terms of there's a certain chosen group that gets all the funding, and anyone outside that chosen group is left with their hat in hand begging for scraps. And Eisenhower in his farewell address called this where his notoriety was a military industrial complex, but he also called it the educational industrial complex. He didn't actually say that, but if you read or watch his farewell address, he absolutely talks about the educational industrial complex, with the government basically dishing out money to favored groups. And those favorite groups, they scratch each other's back. And if you want to get that government money, you will jump in and you will not challenge the authority. It's actually quite scary. And that's absolutely what's been going on. But anyway, so there's a few years back, I was doing some research on retirement income. And I remember I was reading this and I said, wait a second. They're not counting IRA distributions. They're only counting annuities, pensions, or automatic with recurring distributions, but they're not counting if you just call up to your Vanguard and say, I need a $20,000 distribution. I want to go on a vacation. They weren't counting that as an income distribution. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. What's going on with that? And so I started doing some research on it, and I was trying to get an article written that I could produce. I was going to actually send to the Journal for Financial Planning. But my bosses at USAA, they nicked it. They said, no, let's not do that. And I said, at some point I'm going to have to leave USAA because I need there's more to this than just basic financial planning where we're managing money for a fee that we all get rich off, but the clients don't. And that time came when we closed our office in Alpharetta and we moved to Buckhead. And I said, not only am I being my research is being extinguished, but also I have to sit in some crappy old commute for an hour and a half each way. So I decided to leave USAA. I went to another firm, and this lady didn't. Yeah, she was fine, but she just didn't like the. Again, in financial planning, the real financial planning is research driven. The fake financial planning is just how to separate you from your money via charging you investment management fees. And so it's just so if you're taking a non-compliant position, which anything non-compliant would be, the powers that be don't agree with your assumptions. That would challenge us to be able to keep advocating charging fees for nominal performance, actually horrible performance, and we can't let that kind of research develop any headwinds or tailwinds, because then the whole house of cards would fall. So ultimately, I said I got to go on my own, and I had to write some books, which I've done, and I'm in the course of writing another one now. But anyway, so I came across this research by this Center for Retirement Research, which is the Boston College, and I'm a huge fan of what these guys say. But I'm still skeptical, even though these guys. And they did this white paper, in November 2018, called "How Much Income Do Retirees Actually Have?" Evaluating the evidence from 5 national data sets. And they use Anki Chen, Alicia Munell, and some guy named Jeffrey Sanzenbacher, who I'm not familiar with, but I'm familiar with Chen and Munell. I've done lots of studies on Munell, various CRR, Center for Retirement Research, when I was doing my master's degree back in 2009 and 10. So I'm very familiar with their stuff. And I came across something in this paper that was incredibly informative to me, very humbling, at the same point proved my point that I was onto something, and it gets me fired up. So let me read you some from the abstract, and we'll go into this deeper. Recent research by B and Mitchell, 2017, has refocused attention on the fact that the current population survey, CPS, underestimates retirement income. In the wake of this study, some observers have questioned whether other surveys more frequently used by retirement research also understate retirement income, and if so, whether prior research suggesting that many households are underprepared for retirement is accurate. This paper, and this would be the Munell, Chen, and otherwise, addresses both the questions by examining retirement data from the CPS and 4 other surveys: a survey of consumer finances, a health and retirement study, the panel of income dynamics, and a survey of income and program participation. And the paper compares the income measures from each survey to administrative data from tax and Social Security records, both in aggregate and across the income distribution. It then uses a common measure of retirement income adequacy, i.e. the replacement rate, to assess overall household preparedness for retirement. And the paper found the CPS, again, the CPS is a current population survey, is an outlier in its terms of ability to measure retirement income relative to administrative data, capturing just 61%. This underreporting exists at all points in the income distribution. Now, hold on just a second, because that might not mean much to you. But I'm going to go down, I'm going to skip forward a little bit and talk about the CPS. So we're going to go to the introduction of the Chen Munell paper, which is the Centers for Retirement Research, and we're going to focus solely, for the time being, on the current population survey, because this is critical to what my argument is here. Recent research by B and Mitchell, 2017, has refocused attention on the fact that the current population survey, the CPS, underestimates the income of retirees when compared to the administrative tax data from the IRS and the Social Security Administration. Some observers assume that these results apply to retirement income measures and survey data generally, and have called into question prior research suggesting that a large proportion of the population is not financially prepared for retirement. This question is whether other data sets frequently used by researchers underestimates retirement income, and if so, by how much and where in the distribution. All right, so basically you're saying it's factually evident that CPS underreports retirement income. All right, that is no longer debatable. That, with all researchers, we realize that CPS is just incoherent. No other way around that. So then the question becomes, does that lead to us wondering if the other data sets, the HRS and various other things, are also inadequate it's literally misleading when it comes to retirement income? It reminds me. Now, you might be a believer in climate change research. I'm not. And the reason for that is because we know with ClimateGate, with the East Anglia University, the Centers for CRU at East Anglia, I forgot climate research, I forgot what the U stands for, CRU at East Anglia University. We know when they had the email gate, when they were lying through their teeth, they had to hide the decline. We know this for a fact. We know this. Michael Mann and his band of liars with their hockey stick mentality, with their hockey stick research, quote unquote, we know they had to hide the decline. That's words from them stating explicitly they had to find a way to hide the decline. And I'm not going to get too deep in that. What that did is open up a can of worms. Like, whoa, if they're lying on this, what else could they be lying on? We've since found out that with NOAA, with NASA, it's just been, the whole thing has been a house of cards without question. We know that. So now we can say basically, if it's climate research, you have to go in there with a very skeptical eye and assume it's all fake. I'm not saying that so much with the retirement research, and I'm not saying so much that they're lying explicitly through their teeth, like Michael Mann and his merry band of liars at the East Anglia CRU Center Climate Research. Again, I don't know what the U stands for, but that does lead something to wonder here. And the skeptical eye would say, And now we're going to table the reason for the skepticism, and we're going to table whether or not they're doing it. The CPS is doing it deliberately or not. We're going to get back to that. But right now, we're just trying to solve if the CPS is so jacked up, which it is factually evident. We all know that now. Are the other things so jacked up? And to address this question, now going back to the Munell and Chen's paper, this paper that they're talking about evaluates the 4 data sets used for estimating retirement income, and the ones I just referred to, which is the HRS, the SCF, the PSID, and the SIPP. The CPS is included in the analysis as well, because again, the CPS is the one that's jacked up, and everyone's like, "Whoa, that's so messed up." I hope the other ones are not. That's what we're shooting for here, because people's reputations is at stake. And Munell et al. Are saying, "Yikes! This is what we've been telling people through the Consumer Financial Protection Board, i.e., Elizabeth Warren and whatnot." And that's what we're basing all this other research on. Essentially, we got to make sure we're covering our bases that what we've been telling people is wrong. So they're going in with it, trying to prove that they were correct. That's what they're going in with now. All right. The procedure is to calculate retirement income for each of the 5 data sets and compare the measures to administrative data using the most recent versions of those surveys available. The exercise is important since whether households have enough income in retirement informs evaluations of the adequacy of the private retirement system and discussions on Social Security reform. The results suggest that the other data sets provide estimates that track much more closely with administrative data than the CPS. At the aggregate level, it's basically 100%, 96%, 93%, 81%, where the CPS only captures about 60% of aggregate retirement income and also falls below the other data sets in the middle of the distribution. So basically what's happening here is we're having lots of backtracking saying, yikes, new research has come to the fore that's generated some controversy about what we've been using before being so messed up. We better cover our tracks to be able to validate the other research we're using is valid, because we've been having a significant say in public policy in terms of retirement planning. And if what we've been proved is a wet bag, everything's shot. Now, I'm not at the stage of equating the retirement researchers with the CRU people at East Anglia University, Michael Mann. I'm not there yet. I'm not. But I'm kind of close to that, because as always, bureaucracy is sole reason to exist is what? Is to maintain and expand its bureaucracy. How does a retirement researcher who's saying we're all doomed maintain and expand their bureaucracy? By continuing the theory that we're all doomed with faulty research. And so what's happening here is there's a lot of backtracking that's being done to say, look, no, that one was wrong, but all the other ones are right, so still believe us. And that concerns me deeply here. All right, but we're not done yet. We got a lot more work to do. So to Monell and Chen and the other guy, I forgot his name, Salzenbacher, they're basically saying, look, of the 5 data sets, 4 are pretty spot on. 1 is jacked up. So don't pay, basically don't pay any mind to the one that's behind the curtain. But here's the problem. Jeez. And they kind of blow it off. Given that the 4 data sets track closely to the administrative data, a natural question is whether the income amounts are enough for a secure retirement. And this is what the paper focuses on. Basically, just kind of blowing over the fact that the CPS is so jacked up. Are the other ones still sufficient for retirement planning? And what they find is, no, of course not. Of course not. Thus, we're needed even more. And we need more government money because basically at their conclusion is, basically 41 to 62% of the population is at risk of running out of money. And I'm not here to debate that in this scenario. I'm not. There's lots we can challenge on that. But for this one, I don't. So I want to go more into the CPS to show you how ingrained this insanity is. It freaking boggles my mind. All right. So let's go here. The analysis uses data from the most recent survey available for 5 nationally representative data sets. And we're going to look at this one right here. The 2017 March supplement of the CPS, which is the current population survey. The CPS was originally designed to measure the monthly unemployment rate for the civilian non-institutionalized population. In addition to labor force statistics, however, it also conducts supplements meant to capture more information on a household's economic situation. Perhaps the most often cited of these, the March supplement, more formally the annual social and economic supplement, contains information on the amount of sources of income from the previous calendar year and is the official government source for poverty statistics. The analysis in this paper uses the 2017 March supplement, which surveyed approximately 75,000 households about their income receipts in the prior calendar year. Now, let me repeat that. It is the official government source for poverty statistics. The CPS defines income as money received on a regular basis, excluding capital gains. Prior studies have found the CPS understates the resources households have access to in retirement. One reason is that, unlike defined benefit plans, defined contribution plans such as 401ks and IRAs accrue account balance and generally do not pay out regular income streams. In response to researchers' concerns, the census redesigned the 2015 CPS, adding and reordering questions to better assess sources of income for older and lower income households. In particular, questions were added explicitly on withdrawals from all 401k, 403b, and IRA accounts. In the past, the survey only mentioned pensions or income broadly. However, respondents are still primed with questions about the frequency of these withdrawals, i.e. whether payments are received weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually, likely limiting responses for one-time or irregular distributions. Interestingly, B. and Mitchell in 2017, which uses prior data to the redesign, found out the CPS understates defined benefit as well as defined contribution income. The paper uses the redesigned CPS, so it'll provide insight in how the redesigned questions compare with other surveys. All right, so let me stop there for a second. What's happening here, my friends? We all recognize that the information was jacked up before. So we redesigned it, hoping to be more attainable or more, what's the word I'm looking for? More legitimate. All right. So we can use that more legitimately because the previous information was bad. All right. But remember, let me just go back. This was the information, the official government source for poverty statistics. Recognizing now, everyone knew that it was bad before, but we redesigned it. It's going to be good now, right? Now, let's keep going down. All right, so I'm going to keep going down here. All right, we're going to keep. All right, let's see here. All right. It has been well documented that the CPS underreports retirement income relative to other sources, going back to 1995, 96, 2008, and so on and so on. B and Mitchell in 2017 refocused attention on this underreporting. Now, remember, I was looking at this in 2016. I had no clue that going back 21 years previous, someone had brought this to their attention of the quote-unquote authorities. B and Mitchell in 2017 refocused attention on this underreporting, linking the 2012 CPS to administrative records from the IRS and SSA, Social Security Administration, and the paper came to a similar conclusion as earlier literature. The CPS understates median retirement income relative by 30% relative to administrative data for households age 65 and over in 2012. The accuracy of retirement income measurements across other data sets has not been studied as comprehensively as it has been in the CPS. Still, a few papers provide, I don't care about that. Hold on a second. Let's see, retirement income, right here. Studies that compare retirement income. Okay, hold on. I want to go, bear with me just a second, my friends, because there's something else that's critically important when it comes to CPS. All right, so here's the results of this paper. Bear with me just a second because I want to show you something. Aggregate income is what we want to talk about here. Here we go. As expected, the CPS severely underreports income from retirement plans and thus overall income, and an issue the redesign does not seem to have corrected. The finding is consistent with the B and Mitchell report and much other literature conducted before the redesign. So they redesigned it to make it more up to snuff relative to other researchers, and the redesign did not fix it. It still severely underreports income from retirement plans and thus overall income even after the redesign. Oh, but it doesn't stop there, my friends. It does not stop there. The aggregate results, CPS, okay, all right, I want, this gets bad. All right, the exercise involves comparing average retirement income from Social Security and retirement plans, the two main sources of retirement income for the vast majority of households, by quintile administrative data. So I want to say something here. Now, we're saying the CPS is what they use to determine poverty levels, right? So people say, all right, Josh, but the CPS is underreporting retirement income. A lot of people in poverty don't have retirement accounts to begin with, so that's a non-starter. Let's just say that's true. That's true. Since the IRS and SSA do not publish data for older households by income group, the analysis updates income measurements by quintile from administrative records for 2012 as presented in B and Mitchell in 2017. This estimate is accomplished by adjusting income for each source by its respective growth between 2012 and 2016, which again, the CPS. The assumption is that income from Social Security and retirement plans grew at the same rate across the same income distribution. All right, now listen to this. Figures 1A and 1B compare Social Security income from the administrative data to each of the 5 data sets. The results show that Social Security for all the data sets except the CPS aligns closely at each quintile across the distribution. The CPS, on the other hand, understates Social Security income at all points in the income distribution. For these households, the CPS understates Social Security by about 20%. The CPS substantially understates income from retirement plans for all households across the income distribution. Even at the median, the gap between the CPS and administrative estimates of retirement income is 59%. The takeaway is that once again, the CPS is an outlier, i.e., is not worth the flipping paper is printed on. Remember, the CPS is the official record keeper for the government statistics on poverty. That's what we're using. And yet the CPS is not worth the paper it's written on. I mean, it boggles the flipping mind. Now, I'll get into let me just real quick and wrap up on the Monell, Chen, and whatever his name is, Salzenbacher paper here. their conclusion is their last paragraph: will retirees have enough income? So remember, the CPS is wrong on all kinds of data. So the question is, has everything else been wrong as well? And what this paper I'm reading to you from here reports is no, the other four are fine for the most part, is what they're saying. And so what the theme among retirement researchers has been is that we're all running out of money, we're all doomed. And so someone shows, well, one of the aspects of your citations of this is just jacked up, the CPS. They say, okay, yeah, forget that one, it's an outlier. These other four are correct. And they might be true. And they're going to validate that truthfulness here. The evidence thus far shows that retirement income estimates from four commonly used surveys, because now they're just writing off the CPS outright, the SCF, the HRS, PSID, and SIPP are largely consistent with administrative data, especially in the middle of the income distribution. However, the level of income does not provide any indication as to whether older households can maintain the same standard of living in retirement as they had in their working years. To determine whether income is adequate, it is useful to examine a common measure of whether households have enough financial resources in retirement: the replacement rate, i.e., the ratio of post-retirement income to pre-retirement income. Replacement rates, the numerator of the replacement rate, i.e., post-retirement income, comes from the HRS. Basically, they're saying the HRS is the gold standard of retirement income data structures. In addition to performing well relative to administrative data, which would be the Social Security Administration data and the IRS 1040 numbers, the HRS has a unique benefit of being a panel data set that can be merged with administrative earnings records, an important feature for calculating the denominator in this exercise. The denominator for the replacement rate pre-retirement income can be defined in many different ways, and conclusions on adequacy are sensitive to the definition of retirement income. All right, so basically what I want to show you here. Because the academic literature does not agree on which is most appropriate, this paper estimates replacement rates under four definitions that vary along these dimensions. Basically, the results are going to say the last year of earnings is one of the dimensions. Retirement income is sometimes compared to earnings in the last year before retirement to provide a sense of how retirement income compares to late career earnings. Measuring retirement income relative to late career earnings can provide a comparison of workers' standards of living near retirement rather than earlier on their careers. Final year earnings, however, is a poor proxy even for late career earnings, since this measurement can be volatile and misleading, especially for households that may no longer be working in the year before they claim Social Security. Using final year earnings provides median replacement rates that are about 90%. This high replacement rate is unsurprising given that the final year of earnings is likely to be lower than the typical year. So basically what they're saying is, hey, your final year of work, essentially, that we're going to need to replace 90% of that if we're going to use a replacement ratio, and your final year of work could be substantially lower because you maybe didn't work that much. And I don't agree with that in the least. So because your final year of work could be a plethora of different things. If you think about your top three, or a lot of union government workers, for instance, they'll ramp up their last year of work because they can get tons of overtime working 80 hours a week for basically 6 months to a year, in which they can get their pension based on that. And so now we're going to use that last year work as systemic, I guess, as a way to value how much they have to replace their income that last year work. That doesn't make any sense. And secondly, a lot of people's last year works when they made the most money, not the least. What these guys in this paper are saying, that could be when they didn't work that hard to make the least amount of money. So 90% replacement ratio might be overshooting it because they weren't. It doesn't make sense. Last 5 years of earnings, excluding zero. So basically saying here, I'll read it to you. The last 5 years of significant non-zero earnings, so again, you're 65, we'll take the years from 60 to 64 of your earnings, as long as you didn't make any zeros, that will average those in. That will give you how much you need to live on relative to what you had before you retired. All right, the last 5 years of significant non-zero earnings smooth some of the volatility in the final year earnings and likely provides a better measure of late career earnings than simply the last year, which I completely agree with. Nevertheless, this measure still may not accurately reflect late career earnings, since many may reduce their labor market participation by shifting to part-time or lower paying work as they transition to retirement. So I don't agree with that at all. I think it's the exact opposite. So basically what they're saying is your late career, you're not going to work as much or as hard or make as much money, and thus it's going to skew your replacement number significantly because you're not making as much to begin with in your latter part of your working career. I think it's the exact opposite, actually. The measure also has the potential to overstate lifetime income for those who hit peak earnings right before retirement. They do address, well, that's good. They did address that. And this definition